Everybody in the church can't just go around claiming whatever they want to claim, just doing whatever they want to do in the church, not just saying whatever they want to say. Paul says there is an order. There is a way that it should be done. Point number 1 on your listening guide. Orderly worship invites participation and submission. Participation. Go back to verse 26, he says, "What then, brothers, when you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for the building up." That's the idea. That's the purpose behind it. Everybody seems to come with something different that they're bringing to the table, but the idea behind it all is they're all participating in the building up, not of themselves, not of their own spiritual platform, but the building up of the church. And so you've got all these new Christians that are gathered together in some sort of home or building. They are there for a reason. There's a lot going on outside. In Corinth, there's a lot of pressure to live a certain way, to perform a certain way, to act in a certain way. And here they are trying to be countercultural entirely. And it's hard to do. And they're coming together for the building up of one another. That's how it was intended in the church in Corinth and for 2,000 years since then. At our church this morning, there are literally 100 people over the course of our 3 services here at Sherbrooke who are using their spiritual gifts, their talents, their abilities, not for themselves, but for the building up of the church. I think about the tech crew back there. They're here every single week. They're here earlier than all of you. They stay longer than all of you. You don't even notice them unless something messes up, like I don't turn my mic on, which happens about once a month, but they do an incredible job, and they are trying to make our gatherings together. They're trying to make that gathering be smooth. They want it to be easy to follow. They want to remove distractions. They want our services to be accessible and enjoyable for anyone who sits in the room, and they certainly do a fantastic job of that. I think about our First Impressions team. So many people serve throughout the morning on our First Impressions team. What they want to do is make sure that when you come into the doors of our church, that you know that we are glad that you are here today. And our perspective on that as a church is that we don't believe that anyone accidentally comes into our church, whether you are here every single Sunday or you're here for the first time. We view it as God has graciously stewarded you to our church today. He's allowed us to try to minister to you with the Word of God and with the encouragement from our church family. And our First Impressions team is the front line in making that happen. And they do an incredible job, from the greeters to hospitality to so many other ways. I think of our preschool team and our kids team. So many that serve throughout the 3 services. And here's what they want. They're not running childcare back there. What they want is for your kids and your grandkids to develop a love for Jesus and a love for His church. I don't know about you, but I remember growing up and going to different churches, and being a kid in church was a grind. It was tough. Like, I did not look forward to church on Sunday mornings. My parents brought us to church, and I would sit there in the big service, and it was tough. And you know what? I didn't have a kids ministry team that was specifically trying to make sure that I had an incredible experience and that I loved and appreciated the church. And one of the things that we are blessed to have here is so many people who want to come alongside of you. They want to help you by creating an environment on Sunday morning where your kids feel at home, like this is their home, that they belong here because they should. Because this is their church as much as it's my church or as much as it's your church. I think about our student ministry team, and so many of them serve midweek and throughout the year in all sorts of different ways. Do you know a bunch of our middle school and high school students right now are at Family Church Lake Worth Beach, helping them with their kids ministry this morning so they can have their launch services? The month of September is Student Takeover Month, and our middle schoolers and our high schoolers are going to be all over our campus serving in different ways, from the platform to the sound booth to the lobby, the parking lots, all over the place. And you might say, well, Pastor Jimmy, I feel like that happens every Sunday anyway. It does, because we have some great students who know that this is their church and they are using their gifts and their abilities and their skills to build up the church. It takes a lot of participation. Right along with participation, you see this idea of intentional submission. Submission means you are intentionally putting yourself under the authority of someone else. This happens within the church. When we read this passage as a whole, what we recognize is everybody in the church can't just go around claiming whatever they want to claim, just doing whatever they want to do in the church, not just saying whatever they want to say. Paul says there is an order, there is a way that it should be done. The church family submits to one another and submits to the leadership of the church. We intentionally put ourselves under the authority of someone else. We see there in Corinth, there are some who are leading hymns, but not all are leading hymns. The other ones are sitting back and engaging or listening. There are some who are permitted to speak in tongues there in Corinth. There are many who are not permitted to speak in tongues. There are some who are prophesying, but when they do so, it is to be in order. It's not everybody doing it. And while some are doing this, Paul instructs the rest of them. You see this word come up again and again and again, to be silent and listen. Don't distract. Don't take away from what is being said. Reflect on what is being said. Your time and your turn will come. Don't draw inappropriate attention to yourself. Then I'm sure you notice there is a particular example that Paul uses here in chapter 14. Let me remind you, if you don't remember, verse 34, the women should be kept silent in churches. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, ready to pack up and go? Here's what we know. There's something Paul's addressing here. Because when we look at the New Testament as a whole, and specifically the epistles, what goes on in the book of Acts, there's women that play an incredible role in the churches in all sorts of different ways. Even back in chapter 11, when he's talking about the women in the church, he says when they prophesy and when they pray, there's a way that should be done. So he's not talking a blanket statement about how women are not allowed to speak in church. We don't zip the mouths closed. Well, that's not what's going on here. In fact, the early church in Christianity was so countercultural because of how they treated the women compared to how the rest of the culture did. We know how Jesus felt about that. We see the overarching theme throughout the New Testament. So what is going on in this passage? Well, we don't know exactly because Paul speaks pretty strongly here, but likely what is going on, there were some women. And many scholars look at this Greek word and they don't see it as women, they see it as wives based on what that word represents, who were, remember what we're in the context of talking about, what Paul is writing about. He's writing about speaking in tongues, he's writing about prophesying. They were using their tongue speaking or their prophesying in a way that was not in order. Or they were conducting themselves specifically in a way that made it obvious that they were not honoring their husbands and they were not being submissive to the church leadership. This is the context of what's happening here. He appears to be addressing a specific issue, a specific attitude or posture that was taking place at the moment. Now listen, we could continue to go on with this topic, and we've certainly spoken about roles within the family and all that. There's a ton that we've said about this before. But the larger point of what Paul is trying to say here, this is within the context of saying that there should be order, there should be peace, there should be the building up within the church and not veering from that.